But what I found over time is people are pretty good at change, and you only have to look at the past year to see that we're actually really capable of doing some big change as human beings. And what people don't like is uncertainty. What people don't like is bad communication.
What is up, everyone? This is Ronnie, your host of the Ronnie Asani Show. My number one goal in this show is to bring you some of the most amazing and accomplished individuals in the business world to share with you some real, raw, and authentic business insights. We sit down and talk in a casual setting, nothing too serious, yet we unpack some of the most incredible ideas, concepts, and best practices. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh, and don't forget to share the love. Like, share, and subscribe. Gracias, amigos. Alrighty, we're live. What's up, everyone? Thanks for watching, listening, and welcome to another episode of the Ronnie Asani Show. Joining me today is Hiam Sakakini. A quick intro. Hiam is a transformation change consultant. She's a member board of directors of the Cerebral Palsy Alliance. And generally speaking, she has a lot of experience in the culture change, especially within medium and large organizations and scale-ups. Hiam worked for or at Google for about 9 years and was responsible for manager development. And now Hiam is the founder of the Culture Equation. Love that name, by the way.
Thank you.
We're going to talk today about what has changed, what do we feed change, the importance of change ambassadors, how do we facilitate change, and a few other things. So without further ado, welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right. What a day. What do you want to start talking about? There's a lot of things that obviously we're going to focus the conversation on change. And I guess, what does it mean to you, and what really made you get into it in the first place?
Yeah, I guess it's really interesting when we think about change. We have this assumption that people don't like change.
Yep.
And so therefore there are roles like change manager and transformational change consultant, and I've nicely niched myself in that space. But what I found over time is people are pretty good at change, and you only have to look at the past year to see that we're actually really capable of doing some big change as human beings. And what people don't like is uncertainty. What people don't like is bad communication.
Right.
What people not like is not knowing why and seeing some kind of real light at the end of the tunnel or purpose or
don't keep me in the dark. Just let me know.
Yeah. There's some things that are just fundamental mistakes that I see organizations and leaders make.
Yep.
All with the best of intentions. They don't mean to make mistakes. Nobody comes into work thinking, how can I really upset people today?
How can I screw this up?
How can I really upset my staff or my employees today? They all seem to have the best of intentions, but it's really interesting to see. I mean, I think, I don't know if I'm messing up her name here, but Gladys Berejiklian has done an amazing job of demonstrating how to manage change amidst wild uncertainty.
Yep.
You know, and what she did do really well, if you take her as an example, she showed up every day at the same time. And whether she had great news, whether she had bad news, whether she had I don't know news,
she still communicated.
She stood up and she was a leader, and she led with empathy.
Yep.
She led with understanding. She didn't always get it right, and when she didn't, she owned up to it. She also, I think, one thing that she did was she deferred. She didn't have all the answers, so she deferred to experts. Yep. That was really good to see. You know, we only have to look at other countries, other places where this didn't happen.
Without referring to any names.
Without referring to any names.
Everyone knows.
But we saw a really good example in her. I have to say, I didn't know much about her before this 2020.
I actually did not as well. Partially because I don't really pay attention to a lot of the things that happen in the media and, that type of media. I pay attention to media types like YouTube and, you know, all the social media, but and politics in general. But obviously and going back, without diverting, going back to the year before, we're talking about last year, but also the year before we had the bushfires here in New South Wales. So that's when I started to kind of tune into how she manages crisis. And I would have to agree with you. That's one of the things that she is good at.
I think there was a lot of vulnerability as well that we noticed in her, that we felt for her in those moments where she was quite vulnerable, but we were then willing even more to be led by her. So it showed that you don't have to be armored up in order to be a great leader. In fact, taking that armor off makes you a strong leader. So that was really interesting to watch. There's been some great examples of great leadership out there and great change. And I think if it's done well, you have more, you build more trust, you build more engagement, you build more loyalty. And if it's done badly, all of those disintegrate super fast.
I think what I'm hearing is if you manage change properly, the outcomes and the return on, you know, for yourself and for the organization is pretty good and high. But if you mess it up, it backfires like crazy.
Really does. It really does. Not only on you personally, but on your organization and the reputation of both you and your organization. I think one thing we have to acknowledge is the workplace is getting just as transparent as a restaurant. You know, it's being reviewed every day. So if you haven't looked at your reviews on Glassdoor as an organization, it's time you did. And it's funny, every time I say that to a lot of, you know, organizations and leaders, what's your Glassdoor rating? What's the latest reviews saying? Very few people look at them. And that's the window into your organization. And a lot of people say, oh, it's disgruntled employees. And you actually see a lot of very happy employees leaving great messages of support and great reviews. But you do see some terrible reviews as well. And then you see themes. And you notice those too.
A common theme across, So everyone is like, this company underpays me.
Yes, absolutely. Or I feel I have no career trajectory here. Or managers don't care about their employees. They're not in it for, you know, for helping out their employees. They're only here for the money or the whatever it might be. So you do. You see the same types of reviews and themes pop up, and you have to look at them.
And for everyone listening or watching, we're obviously talking about change management in the context of medium enterprises or bigger or scale-ups, as you've told me before we started. But a lot of the, if not all of the concepts that we're going to talk about and discuss are 100% applicable to small organizations or startups. So even if it's just you got to prepare, because at some point you're going to grow. At some point you're going to have more people. So you're going to have to take all these ideas on board and see how you can implement them moving forward. Anyway, so I guess if you look at change as well, as humans, I always think about that, by the way. We've gone through massive change when you look at generations and you look at technology and what's happened over the last 50, 60 years, or even less. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, internet didn't exist. And what that's done to us psychologically, socially, in so many different ways is amazing, but also weird, you know? And just having to deal with all the different things that come with that change can be overwhelming. And so it's also about how you, as an individual or a company, can deal with all that level of overwhelm.
Tell me more. What kinds of things have you noticed are overwhelming in the workplace?
This marks the first time on my podcast where someone asks me a question.
There you go.
Tell you more about what I've noticed.
Yeah.
In reference to what I just said, I guess the classic one is social media. So I notice a lot of people, and personally I've went through a phase where You get overwhelmed with just being on whatever the platform is and seeing people doing different things that you might, feel like, oh, like I want to do that, or I want to be, in the Bahamas right now, like these people, or, oh, wow, they just bought X, Y, and Z. So that constant stimulus of, or impressions that you get that people are doing different things that you'd love to do, and you just kind of fall into this rabbit hole of comparing yourself. And so we were not prepared for that 20, 30 years ago, because you were not constantly thrown at with all these news. You might get like, your cousin or someone will pass by your home and will say, oh, look at, I did this, or, my dad just bought whatever, but it's not constant. It's not that frequent, not, on that scale. So that's, I guess, one of the examples.
Absolutely. I think the amount of time that we used to have that was uninterrupted is really drastically reduced.
Yeah.
And again, from a workplace perspective, we are suffering from what they call continuous partial attention.
Right.
Just not having the ability to stay focused for longer periods of time and do that deep, deep work.
Yep.
And the irony is, with AI and automation and the kinds of ways that technology can augment what we do in the workplace, is that they can take away repetitive tasks.
Yep.
Obviously, things that we don't have to then, manually do over and over again, which actually leaves us open to do more of the deep work, or more of the creative work, more of the collaborative work.
Yeah.
But we're finding we have less and less of an attention span to do that.
Mm.
And so what I notice is people investing, realizing that, number one, the awareness piece is huge.
Yep.
And then getting ready to do something about it. And whatever that looks like, we're seeing just obviously a lot of people out there who are investing in, detoxing and mindfulness, meditation, or anything which allows them to be fully focused on one thing. It could actually be, I don't know, mountain biking or, surfing, but it allows you to be fully in the present moment, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, not thinking about the what ifs, perceptions, this person here and that person there and what they're doing, but allows you to be fully in the moment. And I think that's a skill that's probably going to be brought into more from a school age all the way through to uni, more and more, is being mindful, being in the present moment, so that it allows your mind to start ideating and doing the important stuff that machines can't do.
Yep.
I hope. That's my hope.
Do you know how every year they, a lot of different sources or sites will publish the top skills for this year, 2021, whatever? What if 2022 is like one of the top 5 skills, be present? Being present,
how cool would that be? How would you measure that?
And it's funny that that would have never been something that people would have thought or even talked about 10, 20 years ago.
No.
So I guess it's a two-pronged approach when you look at it from a business perspective or an organization perspective in regards to the employees and people who work there. One, what can you do as an individual internally, whether that's through, like you said, detoxing or being more mindful, or doing meditation or going on retreats or whatever the case may be. And then 2, what can we do as an organization to remove any unnecessary distractions? Is that how you approach it, or how you look at it as well?
Yeah, definitely like that two-pronged approach. Thinking and mentality is that it can't be just an organization-wide effort.
Yep.
And it can't be just you as an individual. So I think that organizations need to say more like, how does this link to our values? Why is this important to us?
Yep.
Why do we care?
Yep.
Which again increases engagement.
Yep.
What are the things we're prepared to do? What are the boundaries we're going to set so that we're setting a good example?
Yep.
and then leaving it open for the individual to decide what that means for them. What's the path that they need to take?
Yep.
So,
Do you measure going back to change? Do you measure, I guess, the impact on organizations in terms of productivity, even revenue, whatever the case may be? Are there certain things when you go and you look at, okay, this organization, 300 people, they're going through massive change. That change could be, I don't know, merger, acquisition, whatever. And have there been any reports, or have you personally looked at, okay, if the change was not measured properly, that's how much of an impact, or vice versa, if it was done and executed properly, that's how much the organization grew, or that's how much the organization benefited?
That's a really good question. How do you measure whether change has been done well? You know, there's certain things that you need to think about there in just that one sentence, right?
Yep.
And it's very much around communication.
Yep.
Inclusion.
Yep.
Do I feel I had any say in the direction that
Yep.
we're going? It's very much in feeling that you had been consulted in some way, whether it's through a survey. I mean, when you get into bigger and bigger and bigger organizations, you can't have one-on-one discussions with everybody.
Yep.
But you feel like you've had some kind of a say, some kind of input into the direction. Feeling heard, feeling listened to. These are the kinds of things where we see that when people are in the positive, in the green, with these sorts
Yep.
of measurements, that they are planning to stay longer, so you retain your talent, which is important. And that, again, trust increases, psychological safety actually increases through the process. When you are less open with information, less transparent, very secretive, you only tell people at the 11th hour,
Yep.
they feel like they've been hit by a
truck.
Exactly, a truck. Why would they stay and invest their time in your organization for much longer? You know?
Is it hard to measure how people are feeling sometimes? Whether that's because you're not sure if they're going to tell you exactly how they feel because they're worried about what, obviously, these surveys or whatever the medium is eventually will go back to whoever the decision makers are, the hiring managers, the HR department, the directors, or when you go about understanding how people feel, are there levels of confidentiality, or maybe you as a third party, you come in and you say, okay, or anyone else, we're going to ask people and we're going to make sure that this is sort of not shared on a personal level. Like Director X is not going to know that James has said X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conundrum with anonymity when it comes to getting feedback.
Yep.
I'm a big believer that the more direct the feedback, the better.
Just say it like it is.
Say it like it is. And if you feel safe and there is a high level of trust already built in the organization, then that would be my preference in terms of the way to go.
Right.
So actually be, put in the survey what you feel, but know that your name is going to be against that. So that's, something that you should know. And if you're, willing to give more information, great. That would be the ideal for me.
Yep.
If people, and you can sense that that's not going to be a good way to go for a specific organization, then maybe aggregating the information and making it anonymous is better, because at least you're getting some feedback on how we're traveling, how we're going with this change. And you can ask, I prefer relatively often versus once a year or once every 2 years, especially if you're in a big change program, and you're moving through either a merger or it could be a massive restructure. You would want to go maybe every 2 to 3 months. And less questions, rather, pulse-like.
Right.
Survey.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So rather than like shocking people with a 20 question or 100 question survey.
Do you like those kinds of surveys?
I don't think I've ever filled them out, to be honest. I'm being honest. Maybe once or twice. But the more interesting thing is I never felt that they made a difference. But that was back in the day, and I was maybe a snob or whatever. I just didn't feel that the organizations that I worked in really took the feedback on board, and I felt like it was more like it's just a thing that we have to do.
I would imagine then that you might have filled out a survey and that was it. Did you get anything about, well, we've all completed the survey, this is the results, this is what we're going to do, these are the hotspots we want to pay attention to? Did that kind of come back through the grapevine, or did it come back in some kind of communication?
To be fair, I do not remember.
Don't remember.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I noticed that people get fatigued by too many surveys,
right,
especially if there's no feedback loop to say, right, we've heard what this is telling us and this is what we're doing about it. Or you as a team, this is your results. You go and decide what you want to do about it.
Yep.
We empower you. Here is your own kind of granular level results.
Yep.
And I think if people feel like it just goes nowhere, we didn't hear back. I spent, half an hour filling out a survey. Nothing came back. Nothing in terms of actions that will be taken, changes that will be made, things that will be tweaked.
Yep.
You become a little bit, what's the word?
Numb?
Yeah, a little bit numb, a little bit, maybe a little bit upset.
Yep. That
your voice wasn't heard or nothing was done.
So let's talk about an example. So a company X, founded by local founders, let's say here in Australia, 2 Australian amazing entrepreneurs founded a company, grew at 200 employees, and they decided to exit. They didn't tell anyone up until everything was finalized, sold it to, let's say, an American company or another company from another country.
Yeah.
And that other company owns a suite of companies, and they have a lot of ambitious plans to expand over here. And so they're coming to, obviously when you buy a company, you like what you're seeing on paper, but you want to make massive difference to get return on your investment. So you bought it, let's say, for $100 million. This is your net profit every year. What you'd like to do, whether you plan on selling it in 5 years or retain it, you want to get your money back, and you want to position it for maybe an exit that gets you even higher returns. So what that means is you're probably going to look at cost. You're probably going to look at some change, right? Whether that's cutting cost or whether that's bringing different people in key positions of the company or whatever the case may be. Everyone knows that this is happening because we just got told, hey, we're exiting, company X is buying. You, as Hiam, what do you do?
If I was
you got contracted to come in and manage this whole debacle, whatever you call it.
I'm not sure if I would take it on. I mean, I have to believe that there is more than one way if you want to grow an organization and eventually realize I guess that profit, and I personally believe the quickest way to grow an organization is to grow the people within it.
Yep.
Grow their capabilities, grow their skills, grow their confidence. Let's say you didn't have the option of taking on one more person. So you've bought this company. Then all you can do is look at the individuals that you have and figure out how to grow them, right? That's the only way. And one of 2 biggest levers that you have to be able to do that is you would look at your culture.
Yep.
So you would look at what drives these people, what gets them out of bed in the morning, what makes them excited about their work.
Yep.
You'd look at the culture, you'd look at the pillars around that culture. So you'd be looking at the purpose.
Mm.
What is our purpose beyond profit? What are we here to achieve? What are we here to advance in the world?
Yep.
I'm guessing that's what attracted these people here.
In the first place, yeah.
Exactly. And values. So what way do people behave in the absence of any leaders? What guides them to make decisions without, imagine if you removed every manager, it would be your values.
Yep.
So you would look at those two things and you would see how you can augment, make better, excel, bring to life.
Yep.
If they were just posters on a wall, like this
Yep.
beautiful poster behind me.
Thank you very much, everyone. Ronnie Asani's show
There you
post
go.
over here.
So that's one lever. And the other lever is your leadership. So you'd be looking at those leaders and you'd be thinking to yourself, are they working well together as a team?
Mm.
Are they siloed? At worst, are they competing against each other? Are they hiding information from each other? And you would probably want to invest in a good coach to bring that team together as a world-class leadership team. Because when you do that, that is definitely one wonderful way of unlocking potential across the organization. So that's my two levers that I would be looking to pull
Yep.
if I was working with that type of organization.
Amazing. So can we dive in a little bit into what you do with the culture equation? Do you focus on key areas? Like, are there certain things that you focus on when you work with organizations, and what are they?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, it is all in the title, culture. And
Yep.
I believe culture is the soul of an organization. It's the personality. It's the vibe that you just feel
Yep.
when you start working there and you think, oh, wow, this is different from the last place. I mean, I
Yep.
went from DHL, which is a wonderful company.
Yep.
It's German. It's very, process orientated,
Yep.
operational in focus. Moved from that to Google. And I tell you, I felt a huge difference. There was nothing wrong with DHL.
Yep.
I enjoyed it. But when I moved to Google, there was just a feeling, an energy, an excitement, a sense of purpose, a sense of why we're here.
Wow.
And I remember day one was the first day I'd ever even understood what culture felt like.
Mm.
You know, I literally walked into a room of it and I just felt it. So, and I'll tell you a quick story about that particular
Yeah, let's
day.
go. I love stories. Let's go.
So, I mean, after a ridiculous amount of interviews, I think it was 7 interviews for an entry-level job. It wasn't a mid or even senior level job. I finally got in.
Yep.
And I was told, onboarding be at this building at this time. And I walked into a room of 80 people, all from different places in Europe. But this was in Dublin.
Right.
So all
okay.
speaking their native languages. It was like the loudest noise of Italians and Spanish and French and Irish and English, and everything you can imagine. And I immediately felt that sense of, what am I doing here? They let me in by mistake. You know, the sense of imposter syndrome. Everyone had 2-3 languages minimum and I had 1. Everyone had kind of, masters, PhDs. I had my little bachelor's. I felt very small that day. And I remember then out of nowhere, there was a voice, is there a Hiam here? And I was like, they have figured it out. They shouldn't have let me. And somebody's literally come to remove me from this amazing group of people. And it was my new manager coming towards me. And he said, look, we're so excited. You've, started work today. Your team is looking forward to meeting you. We want you to come up as soon as you get a chance and meet the team. And I was the only person that had a little kind of, individual one-on-one welcome from their manager that day. And I felt, in that particular room, in that moment, I'm sure everyone got welcomed at different times. But I remember just feeling incredibly valued in that moment, incredibly just excited, happy that he made the effort just to come down and somehow seek out in a room of 80 people his new person that's starting that day. And from that, literally that moment onwards, I was all in. I really wanted to excel in this organization. I felt I was with high caliber people in an organization that had great meaning, great purpose behind what it was doing. It was all around democratizing information. For me, that was an incredible thing to be a part of. It was fast growing. There was so many opportunities left, right, and center. And I felt that I absorbed the how we do things just by watching people. There was definitely a constant default towards collaboration. In fact, you would hear the words, that's not googly, if somebody wouldn't collaborate for some reason.
Yep.
There was a default towards openness and transparency. There was this TGIF ritual every Friday. Everybody would meet and they could ask any questions to the founders. This was amazing to me for such an organization. There was a default towards all these behaviors that were demonstrated from the leadership first and foremost. And that was, for me, I started to understand what culture was, how it's demonstrated, how it's lived, how it's breathed, and why it's so important, how it's your differentiator in business.
So the culture got your 100%.
100%.
It made you want to put in more than 100% every single day. And I think that's one thing that allows companies with great cultures to compete and make more money and grow, because they get from whoever who's working with them the 100%. And the difference between 100% and 80%
massive
is basically you surviving and growing and being at the top, or going bankrupt in 5-10 years.
Exactly. I'd say shorter in this world that we live in now.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it all started with your first day being like someone making, or the company making you feel valued. When you walked in with a lack of assurance, not having certainty about your capabilities compared to other people, and they just took that without even knowing, and they threw it out of the window and just made you feel like you're in the right place.
I will say that particular manager I still keep in touch with today. So there's an authenticity around the relationships there. They don't start and end when you leave the company.
Yeah.
In fact, my greatest advocates and supporters since I left Google are Googlers who have just been incredible. Yeah. So I'm very lucky to have had that experience. And I remember when I applied for the job there, my father said, and he's Lebanese, so you know this, he's like, Google schmoogle. He calls their company this.
That's hilarious.
So I
a few people watching can relate.
Absolutely. So I remember him saying, this is terrible. Go for a bank. Go for something a bit more, stable, not this funny company with a funny name.
Yeah. What does he think now?
This is a good move.
Yeah, he agrees. Well, a proof is you spent a lot of time there. You worked for 9 years. So I think the average is 2 years working in a company, like not in Google, in general.
I was going to say, really?
I guess across, I read a survey one time that the average of how many years people work in a company is about 2 years. Wow. So I guess it's skewed by some people going in and working for 3 months, 6 months, whatever the case may be. I would say in general, 9 years is quite long. Now, how do you go into a company and say, hey, your culture is okay, it's not bad, but we need to make it great? What? I guess it's an open-ended question. What kind of things you start looking at? What do you measure? And I guess it depends on, it's different for every company, but do you have a specific plan? Is there a roadmap? Do you look at, things to achieve in the first 3 months, 6 months, year?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost for me, ground zero is always around this company's reason for being. And really interviewing as many people as I can around that, because you'll often find such differences of opinion on such a simple question. Yeah. And like this book that you have in front of us here. Yeah. The Start with the Why.
Show the people.
Yeah, this is my starting point.
If you haven't read that book, you should definitely read it. Simon Sinek is someone I follow. He's amazing. Start with Why is a really good book. Highly recommend it.
Yeah. So I feel like if we can really, and it's called a discovery process that I go through between one-on-one interviews with the stakeholders, but also the the influencers, so the people that others listen to in the organization.
Right.
And I call them also like the positive deviants, the ones that you want more of. For some reason, they're just killing it, and they're just the right people for that organization. I really want to get under their skin and understand what it is that gets them excited about this organization.
Yep.
And then I want to know how aligned the entire staff are towards that. So that would probably take the form of a survey. Same as with values. I want to know what it is that the values are stated.
Yep.
Then there's always the unwritten rules. I want to know what they are too.
100%.
And then again, I want to know how aligned the entire organization is towards those.
Yep.
Sometimes that'll take the form of some observation as well. So just being around people in an organization. But from there, I feel that, as I mentioned before, we need to then look at the leadership side. We need to measure things like psychological safety as a team. And we need them to operate, like a flock of birds.
Yep.
Just flying in formation, but being able to change direction very quickly.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of work I usually do with leadership teams as a second point, but I connect the two. So there's a lot around the purpose, the values, and then there's a lot with the leadership team. It usually, as well as it's around skills, leadership skills, things that are not taught in university.
Yep.
Simple skills around listening, which you do a great job, by the way.
Try.
Simple skills around communication.
Yep.
Coaching, that's a big one. So we work a lot on augmenting skills.
So one of the things that I started to think about recently after watching one of the Gary V's videos, I'm not sure if you know.
No.
He's quite high profile in the world of entrepreneurship, content marketing. I'm sure a lot of people listening know about him. So one of the things he was talking about, so he has media agency, has ton of different companies, and most of his content is on social media is around motivating people, giving different levels of advice. Sometimes it's purely entrepreneurship, sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's just motivating people. And he talks to, his audience is anywhere from teens all the way up to directors. And one of the things he was talking about is when he hires people, he looks at how to motivate them on a personal level. And so he asks them explicitly what motivates them. Is it money? Is it recognition? Is it career path? So he really tries to dig in and find out what exactly motivates people. And it's not like I used to think that the one thing that motivates everyone is money. It's not. Some people are really not motivated by money, and they're happy with what they're getting paid, and they're happy with getting paid a little bit more every year, but not go massively up. Excuse me. Whereas some people, and for them, motivation is about, recognition. And there's, 10 other things. So the question is, and I'd love to know whether you agree with that or not. When you look at the culture, do you try to also find how to personalize these kind of things for people working within the company?
Yeah, you've just exactly answered the question, which is how do you personalize it for everybody? How do you do that? And what you've demonstrated there is a great manager will ask.
Yeah. But there's also systems. There's also what if the company doesn't have that?
It doesn't have great managers?
No, it doesn't have that level of that structure or process to personalize. So I try to think about this. Let's say for a company that has 1,000 people, they can't just have a system, or can they, that motivates and remunerates people in different ways. So 100 salespeople, if you do achieve the targets, you'll get that much money or pay. And then that person doesn't really care. I guess if they were sales, they say. But you get my point. So maybe another department. So that level of granular personalization, is it feasible, and how do you do it?
It is feasible.
Okay.
But the only way to do it is through great managers.
Right. Okay.
Because then, without in the absence of that, all you do have is the peanut butter approach. You know, everybody gets this commission if they hit their targets, or everybody gets entry level gets this salary, then they get this bonus if they hit this milestone. So you could program these sorts of things in. But if I don't know, Rani, what is it that you want to achieve in the next year in this organization? Tell me, what's your own company? What's your
is that a question to me?
What's your big goal?
I have 4 or 5 different big goals. One of them is to grow, I guess, my main company, which is a suite of different digital services, 3 to 4 times, which I think is quite feasible because it's not that big. Some of them are personal goals, but still in business. So growing the YouTube channel. So if you're watching, give it thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe, tell everyone you know.
There you
go. Grow my social media presence, and start another startup on the side.
Wow.
In a different industry.
There you go. So there's a lot of, if you were in an organization, that might translate to, I want to grow my portfolio of clients by 3 to 4 times.
Yep.
I want to grow my own personal brand within this organization through a YouTube channel, and I want to double or triple the amount of followers that I get.
Yep.
I simply couldn't know that's what motivates you if I didn't ask you.
Yep.
And so none of the things that you mentioned there were really monetary. You know, I suppose if you grow the business, it's going to grow by definition, it's going to grow some income, right?
Sure.
Or dependent on that, you may then hire more people, and the margin and everything nets out the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but without asking you this question, and then the follow-up question being, well, what can I do to help you get there? You know, is important for managers to ask those simple 2 questions. What's your goal? How can I help you get there? And more often than not, the goal is never really, I want to just increase my salary by 5%. Exciting. Woo. You know, it's usually a more around learning. Maybe I want to complete a master's, but I want to continue working at the same time. Maybe I want to start a family, so actually I want to pare back. I want to go part-time. Maybe it's around travel. How can I move within the organization to another country and work from New York or from Milan or something, right?
Or maybe I want your job.
Or maybe, I want a job like yours.
Yep.
Dear manager, how can you mentor me into such a role? Great. Fantastic. And the best managers out there don't see that as a threat. They see that as an invitation for them to continue
to growing,
right? To have great people who want to step into their shoes eventually and support them as they grow. So that's what I mean by a lot of this hinges on great managers, because if those conversations don't happen, personal career conversations, then these people will eventually leave, and they're your greatest resource. So it's important. And your greatest brand advocates. They're the ones that are telling other people like them about what it's like to work in that organization. And for you in particular as a manager, I've got this great manager, asks me about my career, takes real, personal attention to where I want to be and helps me get there, connects me to people that can help me, helps me pay for courses that will help me get there, or whatever it might be.
Yep. Sure, a lot of people listening or watching might be starting a business or have small businesses. So, like I said in the beginning, a lot of these things can be applicable, and I guess one of them is thinking about your values from day one. Starting a company, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you in that type of business? What does it mean to you? And being crystal clear on that. And what else?
Well, just to expand on that, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're starting your own business and you want to start with the values, And obviously you start with the why before that. Why am I getting into this business? But you want to put your values on paper. It starts with your personal values. What drives you personally? What are the kinds of values that have always kind of been your backbone, or what you rely on in order to make tough decisions? And that can be the starting point for writing your company values. For example, collaboration is a big one for me.
Right.
I'm a big believer in it.
You should collaborate then.
We
are.
We are. But you see what I mean? I think if that wasn't one of my personal values, and it is one of my now company values, it wouldn't be authentic. Because I think that the values do need to be authentic to some degree to the founders.
Yep.
And then they can change, slightly over time. They can be refined.
Yep.
But you can start there.
Yep. Age like fine wine. Okay, so values, knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Is there anything else that people are still starting in the first, taking the first few steps that you think people should think about at least? Besides those, I'm trying to think also out loud with you. Structuring what sort of like functions that I'm going to need first, how am I going to sell to people that's a big one, I think. How do you, as an organization, whether big or small, sell to prospective employees working in the business? Because if you're really after the best caliber, you're going to have to
fight for them.
Yeah. And part of fighting is convincing them that this offer, and we're not just talking about money, because you got to be competitive on that too.
Yeah.
But okay, let's say company X and company Y are offering the exact same remuneration. If you're one of the best, calibers out there, you're going to think and you're going to do your research, your diligence. You're not just going to take a job. You're going to be talking to people. So I guess part of it is practicing what you preach and living your values, because I'm going to ask people who work in the company, but also how do you, as a hiring manager in that interview, convince that person that this is the job you should take?
I think it starts even before the interview. I think if you have the right approach, you're pinpointing the people that you would like to work in the organization. You're being proactive, not reactive about it. You're having conversations, not just interviews. So you are learning about them before you even get to an interview stage. And you still should interview, by the way, and you should still do it in a very objective way. And you should always keep an eye on the diversity lens. Am I hiring more people like me, or am I being very thoughtful and going out, especially for people that are not like me, think differently, are different, come from different backgrounds, and all of that. I think as you build an organization, for as long as you can, as a founder, as a CEO, you should be heavily focused on recruitment, on bringing the right people in, especially into those very key roles, head of roles.
Here's an interesting idea / thought / question. Well, I guess idea / question, because idea and thought very much the same. So if you're a very, very large organization, having extreme diversity, in my opinion, is great, because your creative output tends to increase when you have people from different, like you said, backgrounds, different places in the world, expertise, skill set, and whatnot. If you're a smaller organization, I guess that also applies, but and a lot of startup founders think that way. We need to hire people who have, in a way, think like us, have the same vision, have the same values, etc. And having the same values probably doesn't negate having people with, that bring diversity, but sometimes it can mean that diversity brings people, like having diversity can bring people who are not aligned with the company values. So what's the fine balance, and is there such a thing as what I just said? And what is the balance between going too diverse but still retaining the culture, the vision, the mission?
I think you've probably answered that question quite well, in terms of you can have people that come from various different walks of life. I think that's really important. Different walks of life. We typically think of diversity from a gender lens, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
Right? There's cultural background, sexual orientation, age, ability. People from diverse abilities, physical disability, neurological, whatever it might be.
Or even interest in things.
Yeah, personalities as well. Introvert, extrovert. Are we hiring, again, just for the same?
Yep.
Let's assume that everybody has customers that come from every single one of those sorts of places, and we should have employees that reflect our customers. And we know that those mixes of employees that are beautifully diverse in nature, and then having an inclusive culture when they get there. So kind of diversity is where you're inviting great people to a party, and inclusion is where you're asking them to dance.
Yep.
There's no point inviting people to a party and them just sitting around being very bored and not contributing. And that's the difference. So I feel that those are two very important things when it comes to thinking about this specific question, about alignment. But when it comes to then values, that probably will be the one thread that goes through everybody, is that they feel some sense of connection between the company values and their personal values. That doesn't mean they're exactly the same, but they can actually look at them and go, I get it.
I understand it. I relate to it.
I relate to it. I'm on board.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to match, value for value, but people can see that this is an organization that has values, is driven by their core values, and I'm on board with them.
Amazing. So, are there any things that you wanted to share, or do you think there's something that we haven't covered that you would have liked to cover?
Sort of a trend that I'm noticing now, and I wonder why it's taken so long, is that organizations are investing more now in a team coach, which I believe is really, really smart.
Yep.
Traditionally, when people want to see change, they say, everybody has to go through X program. Let's put everyone through this, like sausage meat style. Let's get everyone through this factory process of a program, a leadership program, or a skills program, a sales training program, whatever it might be. But we are increasingly working in a matrixed sort of environment where people are part of maybe 2-3 different teams.
Right.
It's not the hierarchy type structure is breaking down. And so more and more we need to be working well within those groups, the small independent groups, and then across, say, 2 or 3 teams really, really well.
Yep.
So I am noticing team coaching is the best way to go.
Yep.
Coupled with, through the coaching, learning the right skills so that it advances that particular group and that particular team. So that's just something that I think listeners should keep in mind if they want to if they're a startup, it's a great time still to invest in a team coach. If they're a scale up, again, a fabulous time. And if they're a large organization with a leadership team that has maybe invested in executive coaching one-on-one, but they've never thought about group executive coaching, it's a good time now to start thinking about that.
And then I guess the general advice, if you need help with building a culture, just reach out to Hiam, and
absolutely,
the culture equation will definitely be of help.
Super.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
This has been a great learning experience for me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for sure.
For me too.
Thank you. And for everyone watching, listening, thank you so much. Hope you got value from this, and we will see you next time.